Good afternoon, Mr. Guzmão.
Your seat, whether it's online or in the room, so that we can start on time because we have a tight schedule for today. As you know, we've the great pleasure to welcome Commissioner Schinas, who's the Commissioner on Migration. I'm not going to be too long as the introduction is going to be there for 1 hour for today. And for the second hour, we'll discuss the CAP, which is also another very important issue for our group. Anyway, we'll focus for the first hour on the new asylum and migration pact. I don't want to be long in the introduction because I want to make sure we give the floor especially to our members in the Libe committee, but also to all members of the group. You know, we've been critical of the migration policies over the last couple of years. We've been very critical of Europe becoming a bunker for migrants. We've been critical about the Dublin agreements. We've been critical about also criminalization of NGOs and the one assisting migrants to survive. And we're calling for, let's say, if I should rephrase it in a very short way, we're calling for dignity in dealing with asylum and migration in the EU. And we're very pleased that you take some time to have a discussion with us. It might be a bit of a heated discussion, but I think it's good for democracy. And I think it's good as well, hopefully, to also improve as much as possible the pact that you've been presenting and on how to make it as much as possible in line with some of the core values and proposals of our group. So if you all agree, what I suggest in terms of way forward, I'll give the floor to you, Commissioner, for a few minutes as an introduction. And then I'll give the floor to Connie, our Libe coordinator, who's here, and then our Libe members, and then all members who want to take the floor. What I suggest to make it lively and to make sure we get as many answers as possible from you, I will take a few questions in a row, like 3 or 4 questions, no more, to make sure you get some answers. But please be short in your question, 1 to 2 minutes max. We will set a time limit so that as many members of our group as possible can express themselves. So with no further delay, thanks again for coming to us, and I'll give and pass the floor to you.
Thank you, Manon, and thank you, Martin. Thank you for the kind invitation, which I gladly accepted. Let me, before starting, saying that I'm not the Commissioner for Migration. The Commissioner Ylva Johansson is the Commissioner in charge of Internal Affairs and Migration. I'm the Vice President, within which remit migration is also a part, and I'm delighted to have this opportunity. Let me first, right from the start, that I respect your position, and I fully understand that you have been very outspoken in your criticism of the pact. Again, I respect this, and I look forward to a frank discussion with you today. Heated or non-heated, I think what matters is to have an honest discussion. I also respect your group's position on migration, because this is a very noble position. It's a values-driven position. But as you know, when we discuss migration, we are faced with many different conflicting priorities, and it's our duty in the European Commission as the initiators of policy to try to combine as much as we can the different points of view. I also know that your group had a delegation in Lesbos in the aftermath of the Moria tragedy. I was there a bit before you, and I hope that we'll have the discussion on that as well. Now, starting with the pact, as I was telling you, one would feel the temptation to design a perfect system. I would be very happy to have designed a perfect system that would make us very popular in certain quarters. But we also know, because this was the result of the most extensive consultation on migration policy ever undertaken in Europe, we also know that when we discuss migration policy, a perfect system does not exist. Or said differently, in migration policy, someone's perfect system is someone else's non-starter. So we are conscious that what we had delivered is on the 23rd of September is not the perfect system as you and others may see it, but I think we are reasonably confident to say that this offers the parameters of a historic compromise on European migration and asylum policy, which we do not have for many years and which does not honor us as Europeans. Another initial remark is that when we consulted extensively and we visited all capitals and all political groups, we felt also, given the failure of the 2016 reform, that all opinions formulated on migration policy deserve to be recognized, acknowledged, and addressed. And we did that because we need to have this acknowledgement that everyone should see a stake on what we propose. In 2016, simply this was not the case, and that was largely the main part of the failure. Now, let me very quickly come into the three main elements of the pact. I often use the metaphor of a building with 3 floors, where all 3 floors should be equally resistant and equal in size for the house to make sense. Because a house with unequal floors would not withstand the definition of a house. It will be a house half built. And on migration, the clock has run out on how much time we can live on a house half built. The first dimension of this new construct is a very strong dimension, external dimension, that would govern our relations with the countries of origin and transit and our neighbors, without which we will not be able to define a European migration and asylum policy. We owe our neighbors and the countries of origin and transit ample cooperation, reinforced cooperation, not just signing checks or throwing money around or offering lessons, but providing comprehensive, global, win-win partnership agreements that would allow these countries first to offer a better life to their citizens in their countries, instead of forcing them to put their lives in the hands of the smugglers in the Mediterranean or in the Aegean. But also, as part of these agreements, we also want to cooperate with countries of origin and transit in building more resilient asylum and border systems and procedures. This is not simply a turning of the page. It is a change of paradigm. And this is something that we have not done well in the past. We failed our obligations in building this external dimension with our neighbors and friends, and this is an opportunity to get it right. The second floor would be a new approach to the collective and more effective management of our external borders. This will be done at 2 levels. First, it will be at this moment where someone arrives at the European Union's external borders, be it on a country of first entry in the periphery of the Union or even in an airport in Central Europe, upon arrival, something has to happen. We need to have organized procedures from moment one that would allow us very quickly to provide for health checks, to determine security checks, to determine the asylum profile of the people who arrive to us so that the system can then work. And the second part of the asylum procedures that we need to instill is a more important use of our European border and Coast Guard that would allow very quickly to help the frontline member states, the countries of first entry, that up to now are shouldering disproportionate responsibilities in managing the external borders. And finally, on the third floor, which I know, I'm well aware that is the most sensitive and the most politically exciting element of this pact, it was always the case in the previous effort, the solidarity component. Here also, our starting point is to make sure that we have under the new system an effective solidarity in practice for those member states who by geography are obliged to confront major migratory challenges. So our new pact will introduce a new system of permanent, effective, strong solidarity that we will ensure that at all times the member state at the periphery or the entry that requires solidarity from the EU systems and from its partners will have it. To do this, we went beyond the binary choices that shaped the previous debate, which was a binary choice between solidarity or responsibility or between mandatory or voluntary. After 30 years in European affairs, one of the things that I have learned is that Europe can never be the outcome of a binary choice. Binary choice is not a guide for win-win situations. So in this new system, we're moving into a new, completely new design that would provide, according to the three types of situation that we identify, crisis mechanism, search and rescue, and pressure or risk of pressure, the system and the level of solidarity that's necessary under all circumstances. Under all circumstances, we are confident that this system will match the solidarity needs with the solidarity offers. And I'm ready to discuss in more detail how this will work in practice. Let me, before concluding, say that I'm well aware that there are two issues that are very close to your heart that we have not included in the pact, but we have not forgotten. One is legal migration and talent partnerships, and the other one is Schengen. We do not forget these issues that are totally relevant on defining an EU migration and asylum policy, but these issues we felt that would have to be done separately in a way, because they merit themselves all the attention we can provide, and we have the ambition to do a better and more deeper new beginning. So let me conclude with two remarks. The first is that I understand, and I've been in politics for many years to understand, that there is a temptation to approach this proposal from one angle, or from something that means something to someone. It's a natural tendency, it's a natural temptation. But we have designed a system, and we've put on the table a system that should be seen as a connected whole. Everything that you will find in our 10 proposals, plus the 5 that are still pending from the previous effort, everything connects to everything. And I would not ask you to like it or fall in love with the proposal, but I would ask you to grant at least a more global look at it and understand the interconnectedness and the interdependence of the various elements. The second consideration is that for me, it's unthinkable that Europe does not have a common European and asylum policy. Unthinkable. It's mind-blowing. It's beyond my capacity to understand. We have the biggest market in the world. We have the second global currency. We have agreed on a historic recovery initiative with common borrowing. We're doing many things. And this Europe does not still have a migration policy. So there are many people who may be happy with that. There are people who do not like Europe to succeed on migration. Because if Europe doesn't succeed for these people, that's the easiest way out of the responsibility. But we would confront them. We would confront them by putting something on the table that makes sense to everyone, including the ones who do not want an agreement. And again, let me finish as I started. I know, I value, and I respect your very strong and value-driven positions on migration. But I would also use this opportunity to ask for an honest assessment of what is on the table and for the call to see this in its globality. Many thanks.
Many thanks. And we promise to provide you with a honest assessment without, political considerations, but also practical considerations dealing with lives of people at our borders. We also have members who are elected here in countries that are particularly affected as well. So I'm sure they will be happy to share also some of the practical experiences. I promise to start with Connie, who's our Libe coordinator. I'm sure you know her. Please let me know if you want to take the floor online or here in the room, and I'll take names down. And again, please be short. We'll set a timer to make sure that Commissioner Schinas can provide answers to your numerous questions. Please, Connie, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Generally, I think that for us, perhaps less than any other party, it's not so much a question of achieving perfection. The question we're asking is how, in these years, in this century, can we ensure that the individual right to asylum can be protected? There has to be an answer to that which relates to an individual, not a member state or a third country or any other circumstances. It should hinge exclusively on the condition of the individual. And that is a lesson from the Second World War, if you like. We're not alone in thinking about that. NGOs are mulling it over in many member states. They're addressing that precise question. I have a problem with this general idea of solidarity. It's an important idea, of course, and a lot of people in the group agree, but solidarity is something that doesn't just apply to member states, but has to be shown to individuals as well. So the focus is very much on whether people should be expelled or not even let in the first place into the EU and then carry out a deportation, because many of them are being irregular migrants. So I have three questions. The first thing is, if it's true that you're going to focus on deportation, and that is certainly the case. There is going to be a deportation coordinator, and there's going to be funding for that purpose. How come you haven't submitted a proposal for the asylum seekers in the member states who were already here and who can't be deported anymore? Where there are obstacles to deportation such as statelessness, health, no return to any third country. Why is it that there is no proposal? Because they're already here. We have to deal with them somehow. The second question is crisis situations. That was a specific Greek request from your Greek colleague, the Migration Commissioner, and also the Prime Minister of Greece was calling for a solution to crisis situations because of the migration pressure. And then the Migration Commissioner said, well, if there's an earthquake somewhere, you have to deal with that. That will be a crisis situation too. And a different approach will be taken to asylum seekers then. And because it's so important to define what a crisis situation is, I'd like to know how exactly we're going to define it, or what criteria do we have for defining it. What about the current situation on the Greek islands? Is that a crisis situation? Because that's particularly important, because if you're going to proceed in a different way in a crisis, it could mean that asylum seekers are accepted in member states. But the second alternative is that in a crisis situation, third country nationals could be affected by deportation up to the tune of 75%. For example, in Germany, there are Turkish refugees being threatened by Erdogan. Isn't there a huge... isn't there... And the last question, the airport procedure in Germany has always failed in Germany, and also because of legal remedies that haven't been submitted. How come you decided to adopt this airport procedure? Thank you.
Many thanks, Connie, and sorry, I will be pressuring you all on the time just to make sure you can all take the floor first, and second, we get answers from you. I'll take other two interventions and then give you back the floor for answers. Kostas and Sira, and don't worry, I've all your names down, so you'll get your turn afterwards. Kostas, please.
Thank you, Manon. Welcome. A changing dogma is something we can understand, but I'd like to talk about the more conservative approach, Mr. Schinas, with all the respect I have for you. You said there are 3 floors to the plan, and we're looking at it, but it doesn't seem to have a roof. Solidarity is an economic contribution, and I would like to try to get to grips with this. The way we understand it, some people will be paying for the countries which will accept refugees. That's not solidarity. They will be paying a price. Now, you haven't really tabled a proposal. I mean, you've heard this from Greek MPs as well. The majority, the New Democracy MPs, you've heard people say we're going to make it difficult for the refugees to stay. They're saying this in the national parliament. Is that your approach, that we're going to give people the message that your life's going to be too difficult here, so don't come at all? And in the new agreement, you know that this frightens me, the way it's being developed. With this agreement, I'm afraid that we're going to have people who are going to be trapped in cages in the countries. They will be almost imprisoned. With what right are we going to imprison these people? And then you talked about returns. The new agreement is based on returns. The numbers that the Greek government has published and what you published is completely different from my own research. you have included the legal returns of Albanian citizens, and you're playing a game with the numbers. The question is where they're going to be returned to. What countries are we talking about? Are they safe countries? Are we going to send them to Afghanistan, Libya?
Costas, for trying your best to respect the time. Please, Sarah, go ahead.
Sí, muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here with us. I know that it must not be easy, in particular because it is a little bit difficult. But let's agree on one thing. It's difficult in particular because we get the awful feeling that this proposal is being made by setting the Geneva Convention and human rights aside. And we get the feeling that it's going to create a lot of human suffering. We need some honesty here in our discussion, I think. And I want to ask you if you're okay with putting this proposal forward. And I imagine you are, so I want to know how you can be okay putting a proposal of this nature forward. As I say, it seems to set human rights aside and kind of moves towards the far right's agenda. But let's be a little more concrete. I come from a southern country like you. These are countries that have suffered a lot because of austerity policies in the EU and that have suffered a lot from migratory policies imposed upon them by the EU. And my question for you is, are you really ready to convert our southern countries in prisons for migrants? We think that that's what's going to happen with this proposal. It's not going to look at the issue of human rights. And something else that I think is central, are you really ready to take on the consequences of pacifying the far right on something like this? This isn't just a political issue. This is an ideological issue.
Muchas gracias, Sira. Then I have on the list, I will take a fourth one if you don't mind, so that we can have everyone speaking, and then still hoping you will take all questions on board and being able to answer to all questions. So Miguel, if you're connected, who's also a Libe member. Yeah, works.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we do. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Manon. Bueno, sí, yo, evidentemente.
Well, obviously, I would support what my colleagues have said. I think we should be honest here and frank. And it's not that it's just a bad pact, but it's one that turns over rights and brings up this question of who has the right to have rights in Europe. I understand that there are parts of the population, migrants, who don't have rights in Europe, and that is really worrisome. Now, what I'd like to ask you, Commissioner, is we've managed to get the question isn't that we nearly have zero migrants to the Greek islands, but rather we want to ask about the lack of assistance, lack of humanitarian assistance that have been given to those islands. I think that that's actually positive for Real Far. So we want to ask about this from the European point of view. We don't want to not provide assistance to those who are at risk in the ocean, in the sea, and focus only on the return to Turkey. How are we going to ensure that we don't continue to violate human rights on the borders? And will this mechanism actually prevent any of these violations and detentions of people? Because that's what we're seeing at European borders right now. And we're seeing that agencies like Frontex are actually collaborating with those violations of human rights. So could you please respond to that, Commissioner? Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'll pass you right away the floor because there are already many questions to answer.
And I hope many answers too. Thank you, Manuel. On Cornelia's very valid points. First of all, I agree with you that our solidarity must be first and foremost with genuine refugees. And I also answer to Mr. Arvanitis. Europe will continue to be an asylum destination for those who flee dictatorship and war. There is no way that Europe can abandon this responsibility. This is something that defines us. This is who we are. And this is what makes us unique in a very difficult world environment. At the same time, for us to be able to honor this solidarity, we should also come to the logical conclusion, or the other side of this principle, is that those who have no legal reasons under international law to be under Europe's protection will have to be returned in conditions that are humane, European, organized, and under no conditions of refoulement. This basic premise is that governs and should govern European asylum policy. You also have a legitimate question on regularization that you mentioned. And this is precisely something that we intend to address in the context of the talent and skills package review and the employer sanctions directive. It's a very valid point. On crisis, we will not improvise what is a crisis, and we will not we will succumb to the temptation to be convinced easily on what is a crisis. A crisis should be something that reminds us the 2015 situation. And it's something that the treaty describes as a situation that puts in the enormous risk of pressure, the asylum and reception capacity of a certain member state. So this is a situation that we feel it's legitimate to address, and that's why we're introducing it for the first time in our proposals. Then on the screening procedures, we will concentrate only on examples where these screening procedures work. We are not interested in examples of screening procedures that do not work. And an example of a screening procedure that works is what the Dutch are doing at Schiphol airport. Border procedures and screening, as we are proposing it in the pact now, we have no member states currently that use it with the complementarity that is in our proposal. So we're very confident that we're putting forward a new system that we have an interest to make succeed. So, Mr. Arvaniti.
Mr. Arvanitis. Now, changing dogma towards the conservative, let's discuss that. Indeed, there's a change of dogma from one situation in which, well, you saw what the situation was when you went to Moria, which was basically a non-system. In English, it might be called a patchwork. And we can simply call that as a kind of patchwork in Greek as well, like a little rag of a system, which produces different results, but nothing of comprehensive or consistent nature, and it's something which cannot be accepted in a receiving country. This dogma, yes, is changing. This is going to be changed. Now, I understand that the new system of solidarity requires a little bit of explanation because it's a little bit more complex. It's not as simple as it was in 2016 when we said placement, resettlement, and we knew what the resettlement led to. It led to great disagreement between the different member states. But what we're saying is that when a member state requires solidarity and when it presses the solidarity button, so to say, taking into consideration the three typologies which we're describing: crisis, search and rescue at sea, and risk of pressure and oppression. Well, the new system that we're proposing which will take place under the stewardship of the Commission, and it will take place at a European level. There, it will always be possible for a application to be satisfied. Frequently, that particular application or that particular demand, if you like, may ask for more than the system can provide, either through offering in goods and kind or resettlement. But the final word, however, will be that of the Commission's. Ultima ratio, the Commission will have a corrective mechanism at the end of this particular solidarity process, which will allow us to do the so-called top-up. In other words, add on to or provide that which is missing. Why am I more optimistic that this system will work, or that it has more possibilities of working than the previous system? Because it is practical in nature. It solves the problems without creating additional problems. However, I am certain that it will be a very, very difficult point in our discussion right now and over the days to come, because many will want to remove from that system. In other words, will want to remove from the Commission the ability to have the final word on this. And we'll see if that's possible or not. Now, I agree with you absolutely that Karatepe is no model whatsoever. It is not a midterm or long-term solution. And I, of course, disagree with anybody that says that we're doing this to make life more difficult and so on and so forth. Do you know what the important pull factor is in Europe today? The most important pull factor is that we do not have a migration policy. We do not have that. And that makes traffickers wealthy and rich. Because when they know that on the other side of the sea, they're going to find that patchwork system, they make money that way. When they know that on the other side of the sea, they'll find a European Union with a consistent system with a beginning, middle, and end, and with solidarity involved, then those traffickers will think twice. That's at least what my hope is. Now, you said that there is, I'm sorry. So there is an additional danger, of course, and that is the danger that this system, as we've put it together, that it might cause a situation of enclaves. In other words, people might be entrapped in certain areas. And here the response is that the present-day situation creates that situation, the present non-system, to put it more clearly. The new system, well, because everything will be linked, well, we hope then that the fast screening will lead to fast border procedures, will lead to greater solidarity, returns, refoulement, etc., wherever it is necessary. Now, to respond to my Spanish friends. Now, political argument has been reproduced, and of course I follow the Spanish press, and I follow it with great interest indeed. And it has presented all of this as the triumph of the far right, the great victory of the far right, the victory of the Visegrad Group. So now the three prime ministers from Visegrad Group, along with von der Leyen, we met with them, and they all said that they're against this particular system, that they hate this particular new migration pact that we've put together. So how can one equate what we have put together with some sort of great victory for the Visegrad Group? The Visegrad Group hates this particular process. Now, so I simply haven't understood what all of that is supposed to mean. So I would like to request once again for a bit of calm and tranquility, for an effort to be made to speak about this particular issue, just as Mr. Arvanitis said, and I did indeed enjoy his presentation. What can we do? What can we take? What can we use? But I think it's really not right to say that this is a victory of the far right. Why do you give a victory to the far right, which is not a victory of the far right? I simply do not understand that. I simply, once again, frankly, don't understand that. Now, for Miguel, I never said on the record that we achieved what you said. I never said that. I simply said, and it's quite different, that right now we have arrivals, reduced arrivals. I didn't say no arrivals, but reduced arrivals compared to 2015. And this helps us. This is a golden opportunity because when you build that house, it's easier to build that house in a 2020 situation than in the 2015 situation, which was disastrous. Why? Because the governments that don't want a European solution, they simply don't have the privilege. They simply can't use that particular argument that we're going to be inundated by migrants and so on and so forth. Now they have to speak about content, about the essence, and about what we have on the table right now. Thank you.
We promise a heated debate, and I like it as well that we can discuss on the content. I will suggest that we have 2 more rows of speakers. As you can see, we have 17 minutes left. I suggest to have a first row, Nikolai, Fernando, Jose, and Dimitris, and then to have Petras, Idoia, and Georgios. If I'm not mistaken, I'm not forgetting anyone. Please stick to your time. And Malin. So Malin, I'll add you to the second row then. Please stick to your time to make sure we can get as much as possible in terms of answers. And stick to 1.5 minutes. Please go ahead, Nikolai.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Commissioner, in this group, we want a distribution of refugees coming to Europe based on solidarity. When I look into the proposal from the Commission, it seems to me that that will not happen. I'm afraid that we will have a continuation of camps as we have seen in Moria, humanitarian catastrophes. So I would like to hear from you. Can you guarantee with the proposal coming from the Commission that we will have no more inhumane camps, be that on Lesbos, on Greek islands, in Greece, or anywhere else in the European Union? Yes or no? And secondly, I would like to hear, because when we deal with refugees, we all know that the best thing to do is that no one is forced to flee either from war or from oppression. At the same time, we have seen that the European Union have been giving a lot of money to the Turkish president, while he at the same time have been attacking civilians in northern Syria, civilians in northern Iraq. So now I see that you are proposing to do that to other countries, meaning giving money to other governments and thereby keeping refugees away from Europe. So I would like to know, can we be sure that in your proposal of cooperation with other countries and other governments, that we will not have a situation where government or paramilitary militias like the Libyan militias will receive money while they at the same time are creating refugees either through oppression or through military action? Thank you.
Thanks. We can say that it's clear questions. Fernando, hopefully you're connected. Press the speak button. Okay. Yeah, you can speak? Yeah. Can you try to speak, Fernando? If not, then we will refresh your page and I'll go to next speaker. Jose? Well, we might have a problem online. Yeah, Jose, try. Nope. Should I go to someone in the room by the time you fix it? Well, then the next one in the room will be actually for the next round, but we'll just mix up. Then Idoia, please go ahead.
Muchas gracias, Manon. Muchas gracias, señores Schinas, por estar hoy aquí.
Thank you very much for being here with us today. You were saying that we're not going to have just a migration pact. I mean, we have a great economy, and I think that's because we've set aside the fundamental rights and human rights and basic rights. that should underlie the European project. And I think, we have to say we're not going to abandon all these people, and we have to put forward solutions and have at least a self-critical view of what we're doing today. We already are abandoning these people. We already are responsible for a lot of the deaths. Now, something very concrete. In the proposal, well, as you know, we don't like it because it's not really a pact for migration, because it's not a pact. It's not for asylum and migration either. It's simply something on border control. Now, it talks about how to negotiate with countries like Niger, Lebanon, Turkey, etc. And my question is, do you feel that these countries are safe countries? I mean, what criteria are you putting forward to consider these countries as safe countries? And then in terms of determining these safe areas on the borders and centers on the borders, how are we going to do that? How are we going to determine those locations? How are we going to avoid further hotspots and catastrophes that we've seen arise over the past few years? We're making a distinction between children under or over 12 years old. But I mean, why at 12? They're still children at 12. And then what about when there are no further spots available? What is the EU going to do? How are we going to apply the different laws? We have a lot of questions on this. And I think we need some more opportunity to really look at this in detail. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll try to get back online with Fernando, if it works this time.
Yes,
Yes,
I
go
think,
ahead.
yeah,
Yes.
okay, thanks so much. Good evening, everybody. Buenas tardes, Comisario Schinas. Gracias por participar en...
Well, thank you very much for participating in this GUI NGL group. And with regard to the proposal that suggests resubstituting parts of the Dublin Agreement, now the voluntarity and the solidarity between the member states, don't you feel that this could result in a kind of demotivation? In other words, in the end, the countries that are bearing the burden right now will simply continue to bear the burden, and those others will simply step out of the entire agreement. It might be easier to have some sort of system where assumption of the social cost is taken into consideration. Now, I think this might be the time to establish a system of quotas for resettlement of individuals, for countries, in other words, to take in these people in. And also, I think it's very important to make it quite clear that certain countries, that all countries will have to take in a certain number of people. And I think regions could play their role as well. For example, the Basque region in Spain is ready to take its particular responsibility, as are other areas as well. So I think indeed this is the moment to set down these types of conditions.
Since we're still online, we'll try to go to get to Jose if he's connected.
Yes, Manon, can you hear me?
Yes, we do. Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Commissioner. I think it's a bit strange, since we have a portfolio that is called European Values, that in the end we have a migration policy that is the compromise between positions that are treated equally, regardless of whether they support international law or basic human rights. Apparently, European values are the compromise between member states that respect international law and human rights and member states that don't. I don't have a position that border member states have bigger responsibilities. I agree with you on that. But I don't think we can say right now that European values are not for sale, as the President of the Commission said, because we've actually put a price tag on the lives of refugees. And what I would like to ask you is, if we don't have enough money for to pay for the lives that we've put a price tag on, or if we don't have buyers for those lives, if the Commission is going to continue to keep silent on from the refugees that are being sent back to the territories where they came from, or put in concentration camps, or sent to the sea, as has been done by the Greek government. Is the European Commission is going to continue to observe this passively? Thank you.
Thanks, Jose. We have very few time left, so I'll take all of the last intervention and give you the last time the floor to give you the opportunity to hopefully answer most of them. So then moving on to Dimitris. Dimitris, are you connected? Yeah.
Well, first of all, I'd like to welcome the Vice President of the Commission and compatriot, Mr. Margaritis Schinas. And I would like to say that not only your group of the left, but most Europeans would like a proper an analogous, if you like, proportional distribution of these individuals to the different member states of the European Union. This has been rejected by the Commission. Do you reject this because you don't consider it to be just, or because you don't feel it to be realistic, is my question. The overwhelming majority of my compatriots here in Greece feel that this particular proposal does injustice to the reception countries, and not just to the migrants that are asking for asylum. What does our Greek compatriot, Mr. Margaritis Schinas, have to say to those that say that the injustice of Dublin remains with the new proposal as well? Now, Madam von der Leyen, a couple of days ago, in the plenary, said that rescue at sea is not a voluntary obligation, it is obligatory. At the same moment, ministers of the Greek government who pertain to the same party as you, Mr. Margaritis, are very proud of the fact that the government in Greece right now is issuing orders for pushbacks to take place. So what is your position, Mr. Schinas, with regard to pushbacks? Are they negative and illegal, as the President of the Commission says? Or is this something that is to be accepted, as it's been accepted and promoted by the government of your same party?
To Malin, and then we have Petros and Georgios.
Hello, Vice President Schinas. I'm the rapporteur on the resettlement program, and I must welcome that the Commission supports the deal that was agreed under the Bulgarian presidency, and that you want us to move ahead on that. That is one of the good news. For the rest, I think my colleagues have actually given quite some grim remarks that I agree to on the pact. And I will say, as just a setting, is that it seems that you do have tried to get everyone on board. It means some countries that don't even want to be on board. And that was the first thing they said, the Visegrad and Poland and Hungary afterwards. And I fear that it will be like in the rule of law. They don't want, it's no use sometimes to make deals with countries that don't want to make deals on this. They don't want a common migration policy. They don't want to receive refugees. So I think we should aim for something that is not adapting to their obsession of keeping people out or throwing people out. Because with your proposal, you will divide European countries in two teams, the ones that organize dignified reception conditions, and others that will, declare themselves ready to become the champions of forced returns. So I would say, are you ready to drop this kind of false solidarity, which by you actually ask countries to be the ones that throw people out? Are you prepared to drop that in the negotiations?
Thanks, Malin. Petros?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Vice President, Agapte Margariti, thank you for coming to our group and talking about a value-driven, our value-driven position. I would also like to talk about values, and I want your comment on the following quote from paragraph 129 of the encyclical Fratelli Tutti that Pope Francis issued a couple of days ago. And I quote, "Complex challenges arise when our neighbor happens to be an immigrant. Our response to the arrival of migrating persons can be summarized by 4 words: welcome, protect, promote, and integrate. For it is not a case of implementing welfare programs from the top down, but rather of undertaking a journey together through these 4 actions in order to build cities and countries that, while preserving their respective cultural and religious identity, are open to differences and know how to promote them in the spirit of human fraternity. As you build a migration pact fit for the 21st century, what is your comment on the Pope's thoughts?
Thanks very much. And then please, Georges, to conclude our rounds of speakers.
Ευχαριστώ, Μανών. Είναι φίλτατος ο κύριος Σχοινάς, αλλά νομίζω ότι είναι φιλτάτη κατά τον Πλάτωνα.
I'd like to thank you very much, Mr. Schinas, but I think indeed we have to look at the truth. And the truth has to be explained very, very clearly. Whatever the situation might be, I think indeed what's missing is dealing with the roots of the problem. And we're not romantic for any sort of reasons of naivete. We are romantic because of our ideology and our experience. Next to me is Niazi. He was a refugee twice. I was a refugee twice as well. In 1974, I became a refugee from Limassol, and I was with a family. A family took me up, and I was luckily, indeed, some people, when you think about these unaccompanied minors in Moria without parents, individuals which are at the mercy of God, individuals which may be the victims of violence, they may be raped, they are in a very, very vulnerable and difficult situation. And those individuals that we send back right now, do we know where they're going? Does anybody check to see where they're going? In other words, is it okay for this person to be sent back to Libya, to Afghanistan, to Syria? And then we have these Visegrad countries that are saying, well, oh, they have complaints with us because we haven't butchered these individuals. They have no other issue. They just want to get rid of these people altogether. So I think, indeed, it's quite clear that these countries, how can they in any way, shape, or form impose things on those who think reasonably?
I'm for trying to answer as many questions as possible.
Thank you. Thank you for these questions. Thank you for your interest, and thank you for your commitment. I will start with Mr. Williamson on Moria. Just a word on Moria. Moria is the living example, is the symbol of everything that is wrong with the system we've got, and is a permanent call to change it. So if you ask me, yes or no, shall we have Moria? The answer is, we shall not have Moria if we are able to agree on a new system. If we are able to agree on a new system, we will not have Moria. And I also reply to those who are, including my compatriots, who feel that there will be a bottleneck at the entry points. There is a bottleneck at the entry points now, dear friends, because there is no European system for migration and asylum policy. In our system, which I invite you to read, everything connects to everything. There will be a very speedy screening procedure to be followed by a border procedure, to be followed by solidarity, which at the end will be effective. And throughout the system, returns, if necessary, will be organized in a European way, humane way, with the help of Frontex, and with all the guarantees of human rights. I had a long discussion with Filippo Grandi 3 days ago, and he is the guarantor of the UN legality and human rights and refugees, and he told me, and I thought I do not betray our discussion, if you make this work, it is okay with us. But the big if is, and the fundamental choice we have in front of us is, do we give a go to a system that works, or do we stay with a system, patchwork, Kurelu, non-system, that produces Morias? That's the basic choice that we have. Then, on external dimension, Turkey and not Turkey, Libya, let me tell you that we in the Commission, we do not believe that Europe can or should outsource our responsibilities. Migration policy will not be outsourced to others. This will not work. The same way that these disembarkation platforms and all extraterritorial fancy ideas that have been floated did not work. This will not work either. What can work is these comprehensive agreements with countries of origin and transit and neighbors on the basis of good governance with guarantees and human rights. That can work. And frankly, I don't think that we can compare Turkey with Libya, because Turkey can only be considered as a safe third country insofar as it applies the Geneva Convention. Libya, well, there is no Libya, basically. Libya is, you get what you see. So this is a problem, I fully agree, and this is a problem. And those who believe that Europe can sort of look the other way will fail, because the only way is to engage in the first floor of my house with these countries and make win-win partnerships. Now coming to Idoia. No, el pacto no es sobre el control de las fronteras.
No, the pact is not under the control of the borders. The control of the borders is the second floor. We have 3 floors. And you say that it's only the second floor. No, it's all 3. It's a holistic approach. It's the first time that we have attached the same importance to all 3 floors. And then you asked about human rights, and I've just spoken about Filippo Grandi, and nobody in the Commission is under the illusion that EU migration policy can be a policy which violates human rights. We don't do that in Europe. We are the European Union.
Current theme, also Dimitris asked it, and Dublin, abolishing Dublin, I would be the first one to go for it.
You said it.
Yes. Abolishing, let's abolish Dublin. But to abolish Dublin, you need something else, which is automatic distribution from moment 1. Compulsory relocation from moment 1 to everybody. If this is abolishing Dublin, we tried in 2016. Where did it get us? Nowhere. It got us to Moria. It got us to Moria. So there is a choice between killing Dublin with no mandatory relocation or doing what we did, is putting Dublin aside, enlarging the criteria where the country of first entry is one of the many criteria that allows distribution from day 1, because we now extend it to family reunification, to brothers, to professional qualification, so we can send more people from the entry moment. And then we build the solidarity mix. And again, I will again try to explain the solidarity mix. It is wrong to say that there will be no mandatory relocations into the solidarity mix. There will be. There will be. But there will be in a position, in a percentage, that matches the request. And since the Commission will be the guardian of the solidarity machine, at all points we will make sure that the member state that requests a certain level of solidarity gets a certain level of offer. And to the very legitimate questions, what happens if we still fall behind the request, then the answer is the Commission, with an implementing act, with a legal act, as ultima ratio, at the end, will impose it. I know this is complex. I know this is different. I know this is not politically nice as it was the 2016 proposal, which, by the way, I defended as Commission spokesman to the bitter end. I was one of the few that died over 2016 proposal. But together with me, not only the proposal died, the EU migration policy died as a whole. So now we need to do it differently, and we're determined to do it. On pushbacks and all these questions, there was a big meeting in Libe in July, where 2 ministers from the Greek government were present, where Fabrice Leggeri, the Director General of Frontex, was present, where Commissioner Johansson was present, where these issues were discussed ad nauseam, and everything that had to be said was said by the ministers, by Frontex, and by the Commissioner. I do not feel I have anything else to add, because I do not get information from other sources than the ones the Commission has in our disposal, which is our agencies on the ground, which are interlocutors in government. And if there are these allegations that many of you seem to take for granted, of course this should be investigated, but they should be investigated on the basis of reliable information. I do not get informed on these issues from the social media, market, and I don't get informed at the moment where the tensions between Greece and Turkey are heightened and everything goes in terms of argument. Final point on borders. Another novelty that I hope you spotted is that for the first time we have introduced a human rights monitoring of all situations on the border to be performed by the Fundamental Rights Agency of the European Union, which is based in Vienna. This is precisely to make sure that everything that happens in the borders is fact-checked and monitored in terms of human rights. Values, the Pope. Again, we are the European Union. We're not Australia. We are the European Union. And we will work as European Union according to European values, according to the Charter of Fundamental Rights. We're subject under the legal scrutiny of the court. We cannot improvise solutions. We are a rules-based union. And we are determined to produce a system which is rules-based. Georgiou μου λέει,
Mr. Georgiou has said that I'm romantic. I am, yes. And I'm an optimist to boot. My romanticism is different to yours. Your romanticism says we're right. Whatever, even if what we believe in doesn't happen. But my romanticism is that we will fight until the end for what we've put on the table so that we don't lose anything that's on the table. And indeed, I think that I will succeed. That's my romanticism. And of course, I know what it is to be a refugee. I'm the grandchild of refugees. Both my grandparents were refugees. I don't think anyone is more sensitive to refugee issues than my own family, but I have a mandate from the European Parliament so that at the end of this 4-year period, the EU has its own migratory policy. And when you have the presidential elections in France in May 2022, and Madame Le Pen accuses the political system of Europe by saying, "You have failed. Europe has failed once again." I will ensure that this argument doesn't prevail, because I will allow the critics of Mrs. Le Pen to say, no, Europe did find a solution. It found a solution to migratory policy. Well, thank you very much. You know that our group are the first combatants of the extreme right and their politics of rejection. And we are fighting those who want to put barbed wire up in the four corners of Europe. We are fighting against them. And thank you, Commissioner, for having answered all of the questions our MEPs asked. I know that other members wanted to take the floor, and I'm sorry that this was such a short exchange. And I know that you're late, and we apologize, but I think the debate was worth it. We will continue to look at border management, European values, and the way in which we can implement a system based on solidarity. Thank you for taking the time. You can count on us to be ambitious in the demands that we will make, but also realistic about the way in which it can be implemented in the field. And it is from that point of view that we are approaching this. And of course, we're also working with the NGOs in the field. So thank you very much for having taken the time to join us here. And I hope we will continue this rich, abundant dialogue, and it will help us to make progress on migratory issues in Europe. Thank you, Mr. Vice President, for having taken the time to visit us this evening. I will just see Mr. Schinas out, and then we will continue on the Common Agricultural Policy.
All right, going on, switch back to French. Donc, on va passer